things first, I absolutely acknowledge that an emergency fund of $100,000 is not possible right now for everyone. It certainly wasn't the case for me when I was just starting out my career, flipping burgers, £3.60 per hour in McDonald's and holding the sign in Oxford Street saying McDonald's this way. That said, if you're ambitious about your career, do have some luck on your side, and also intentional about being financially independent, an emergency fund of $100,000 is absolutely possible for you if you're willing to put in the work and also have some luck on your side. I'm going to share about how I was able to do it so that it gives you some ideas about how you can do the same if you want to. But first, if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Dels. I'm a lawyer turned tech and business strategist, and my goal with this channel is to help mid-career professionals who feel bored, burnt out, or stuck in their jobs to make successful transitions into new careers that they love. If that sounds like something that you'll be into and you're all about up-leveling and financial independence, this is where you need to be. So please do subscribe, comment as you go through this video, and just show some love generally. So one thing I'm going to point out at the outset is that not everyone needs an emergency fund this big. In fact, I created mine in the most stupid way, and for a lot of people you might think, what, you're talking about having an emergency fund of 100k and you say you did it stupidly? Well, stay tuned to the end, because now that I know what I know, I'm just like, do better. So the first thing that I did in order to build that emergency fund was that I job hopped. I left a company that I loved working for. I was working in a great team, but I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to do something different. And while I couldn't figure out what that was, I knew that like asking for a raise or trying to negotiate a lot more than what I was earning was not going to happen. And this is one of the things when you're working for the biggest companies in the industry, they're not always the best paid. So Google, for example, is a leading tech company. Everyone knows about it, but ask anyone that works in tech. Google is not the best paid company to work for in tech. No matter what your brain is telling you, that's a fact. And similar in banking, if you work for Goldman, yes, you are earning a lot of money, but you could be earning more at different banks. And the reason for this is that these companies' salary is not their main way of remunerating you, right? That's not the main way that they compensate you. They provide you with lots of other benefits as well. But in addition to that, they know that having their name on your resume, your CV, gives you leverage. It's so transferable, and also they spend a lot of money in training their staff. So that means that if you went somewhere else, you're probably in a better position to negotiate a higher pay if you're coming from one of those types of companies. And that was the situation that I was in. So I was working for one of the leading firms in the world. They were a great place to work for. You guys know that like working in big law takes a lot out of you, but I'm really, really grateful that in my entire career I worked with great people. But because I knew I was going to leave, I was like, okay, this is all well and good, but let's move somewhere else. And in one move, I was able to increase my salary by around 40%. And this is just a lesson for many of you who are like, oh, I'm going to negotiate or I'm due a pay rise next year. If you don't get what it is that you want, you have to really think outside of the box and find a similar company that will pay you more, especially if your goal is financial independence. The second thing that I did was to reduce my expenses. And no, I'm not talking about giving up coffee and avocado, but being intentional about, okay, you are living life. And I was that person who, because I didn't want to face the reality of not being happy in several areas of my life, I would travel all the time and go on these luxury vacations and just do ridiculous things like fine dining every week. Again, I know that this sounds super ridiculous, but I realized very quickly that, look, that's not the way to build financial independence, and you have to be a lot more clever with your money. So I decided to reduce my expenses. And look, I still go back to the fact that increasing my income through job hopping was the main thing, right? Because when I got rid of all of the extra random stuff that I used to spend my money on, because I had increased my salary by 40%, I was then able to do the next thing, which was save 50% of my salary. And I know that that sounds extreme. Completely appreciate that not everyone is able to do that, but this is the kind of thinking that you need to do when you want to make a career change or you want to make a big change in your life. I knew that I didn't have any kids. My family were pretty okay at the time. So if I was going to make the career change, it had to be at that point in my life, because if I stayed doing the same job, I would end up married and having kids, and then it's a lot harder for me to say, oh, I want to make a change when my kids are in school and I'm spending money on them. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't have a lot of things to worry about. So I was able to be like, okay, you need to go hard right now. And I was saving 50% because I was able to. Many people won't be able to do that. But at the baseline, I really, really recommend to everyone watching this video, regardless of whether you want to change your job or not, aim to save at least 30% of your salary. Make 20% your worst case scenario. And if you're strategic about the way that you invest, honestly, you will thank yourself. If any of you are saving actively every month, comment below and let me know what your percentage number is. Like, this 50% for me was a game changer, and it really helped me to accelerate into that. The other thing that I did that really helped with this whole 50% thing was automating my savings. I made sure that I took the decision-making process out of my hands, because when you have to think of stuff, you're like, oh, I'll get to it at some point, and then you don't do it. And then one day you're having a bad day, you go to the shopping mall and you see a dress for like £200 and you're like, oh, I'm just going to buy that dress, and that's ridiculous. But if you've moved the money away from your account and you look at how much you have in your balance, you think twice before you spend, because that money is not immediately there and visible for you. So that's one of the things that is one of my biggest tips as well, is that if you can automate stuff and remove decision making from your savings and your process of building your emergency fund, it's going to make things happen a lot quicker for you. So it would be remiss of me not to talk about the fact that one of the ways that I was able to build out an emergency fund of $100,000 in just 1 year is the fact that I was able to take advantage of where I lived geographically. And this is something that I think a lot of the financial independence people call geographic arbitrage. And if you don't know, I used to live in Dubai. I lived there for around 7 years, and Dubai is a tax-free jurisdiction compared to the UK where I live now, where you are paying nearly 50% of your salary when you think of national insurance and all of those things in tax, right? So again, if you do everything that I've talked about before and you're able to move to a different country, for example, and save a bit more money, that is a great way to build up your fund really, really quickly. I have friends now, to be honest, who are also thinking of moving to places like Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, just to be able to take advantage of the tax benefits while they build up their deposit fund for their houses in London. I know again that not everyone can do this, but if you can, this is why I'm such a big proponent of working abroad. It really, really changed my life. And now that I'm back in the UK, I think I'm going to be heading back out again. Before I talk about the mistake that I made, I guess the last step that I did to help me build this buffer was learning how to invest and the importance of having separate accounts. And even when I learned all these things, I was really, really nervous and still didn't follow the steps properly. But I learned the importance of compounding, of investment accounts, and all of these things. So doing all of those things really helps me to build my emergency fund automatically every month. And at the end of the year, I was like, wow, I have actually over $100,000 here, because a few years before I had been saving, but it was very, very sporadic, and it wasn't kind of a match for how much I was earning. So if you've been following this channel for a while, it's no secret that I was in a high-paying job, and now I am in a high-paying portfolio career that I built myself. But pretty much before, it was like work, and then save, but no intention behind it. And when I decided that I wanted to make a career change, I decided to build a financial plan, which is one of the big things that I talk about with my clients on Career Game Changer. But one of my biggest mistakes, and the whole driver behind this video, is that my emergency fund was like built up in a very silly way. First of all, I actually didn't need that much money. The emergency fund that I built was based off emotion of fear and panic instead of being strategic and thinking about my future and retirement. Because if I thought about it that way and said, okay, my short to medium term goal is to make sure that I'm financially secure in the event of an emergency, if I make my career change, that if the worst thing happened and I wasn't working for a while, I would be able to meet my expenses. I wasn't thinking like that. I was like, oh, I want an emergency fund that is just huge, and I you know, if I was a lot more strategic about it, I would have split that money and probably done like 60-40. So 40%, $40,000, I would have had that in a cash account, or now that I'm in the UK, if I was going through the same process, like premium bonds, basically something that's really, really accessible. And then the other 60% would have gone in my long-term investment account, because like I said, I didn't grow up with money. So in my absolute worst case scenario, I would have been fine to live on like $20,000 to $30,000 for like 6 months. I know that that sounds like a high number for many people, but living in Dubai is very, very expensive, right? So that's one of the biggest things that I want to kind of hone in on in this video, is that if you are building an emergency fund, well done. That is the best thing for you to do. Everyone should have one, regardless of how secure you feel your life is, your financial security is, everything. You should have one, because look at how unpredictable the past couple of years have been. That said, please don't ignore the value of compounding and the power of interest and putting your money in a tax protected account, because my emergency fund of 100K was just in a current account. And even now when I think about it, I'm just like, seriously, that was so silly. And this is the value of being financially educated and having guidance when you're planning to make your career move. I hope this video has been helpful. If you really want to dive deeper on it, especially if you're trying to make a mid-career change, then you have the opportunity to join me live on a private training that I'm going to be hosting. Details in the description box below. I'd love to see you there if you're intentional and driven about building a financially independent and secure future. Thank you guys for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.